What's the most satisfying way you've seen a company's lawyers embarrass themselves? This story happened about 20 years ago when I was still in college. I worked weekends at an office where my job was basically to be there if anything went wrong. I'd arrive at 8 a.m., check systems every hour, answer a few phone calls, and leave at 4 p.m. when the next person came in. Most days were quiet. I probably worked 10 minutes out of every hour. The pay was decent, holidays were double pay, and I could pick up weekday shifts when someone called in sick. One day, while I was covering a midday shift, my boss called me into his office. He told me an evening weekday position had opened up and offered it to me. I accepted. He told me to clock out and come back at 5 p.m. to start my new schedule. For months, everything went smoothly. I worked 4 p.m. to midnight, handled calls, logged updates, and kept things running. Then came Karen, the day shift coworker who suddenly decided I was doing everything wrong. It started small. She'd complain about how I filled out logs or how I followed up on issues. One Friday, a remote system jammed up during her shift. She called the site, logged it, and went home. 5 hours later, I noticed the issue was still unresolved, so I called again to check in. They said they still needed help, so I contacted one of our senior staff before she left for the weekend, and we got it fixed. The next day, Karen complained to management that I ignored her log entry. My boss called me in and told me to start highlighting every important entry to prove I'd read it. So I did. My logs turned into mini essays, full of references, times, and details. It was tedious, but it protected me. Things settled for a bit, but the tension never fully disappeared. About a year later, I went on vacation to visit friends. When I came back, my boss asked to meet after hours. He asked me to explain how I handled one of our software update tasks. I walked him through my process, the same one I'd been doing for months. He looked at me and said, "You haven't been doing it correctly. You're fired." Apparently, I'd mixed up the date code on 2 update files, one English, one French. The system was already running the latest version, so nothing was actually wrong. But the decision was made. I packed my things and left. Since my state followed at-will employment, I figured I had no recourse. They could fire me for any reason. I started applying for new jobs, assuming that was the end of it. A few weeks later, while scrolling through job listings, I found a link about employment law. I clicked it out of curiosity, and what I found changed everything. The company's employee handbook included a job security clause. It said no employee would ever be laid off, and if a position was eliminated, we'd be retrained and moved elsewhere. It sounded nice at first, but it meant management usually fired people to avoid that policy. However, according to a ruling by my state's Supreme Court, that clause actually canceled their at-will rights. It meant they couldn't fire anyone without just cause. Suddenly, I realized they'd broken the law. I contacted a lawyer and told her everything. She asked me to bring evidence, so I started gathering it. I knew more about that software than my boss did. I even had it installed on my personal computer. The company had claimed that the file date proved I hadn't done the updates correctly, but that date wasn't tied to when the update was run. It was part of the version itself. I proved it by reinstalling the same file multiple times and showing it always displayed the same date. I even used archived versions from the vendor's site to show that the file's build date never changed. Then, I demonstrated how the process had once been automated by a script. That script broke years ago when the vendor changed something on their site. The fix was as simple as deleting 3 characters in one line of code. Nobody ever did it because the person who wrote it had retired. And if this update was supposedly so critical, why wasn't it done on weekends or holidays? I found logs showing updates were released on Christmas morning, and nobody cared then. I compiled everything: logs, screenshots, update archives, and explanations, and handed them to my lawyer. She contacted the company's legal department. Once they saw the case law and my documentation, they realized they were in trouble. They settled fast. I can't say how much due to confidentiality, but it was a good chunk of my annual salary. I also got unemployment during that time, so I came out ahead. About a year later, I heard through a former coworker that the company had lost a lot of revenue and shut down the branch I worked at. Karen lost her job and the site closed. Only a handful of employees were relocated. In the end, their expensive lawyers missed something huge. I didn't.